I slept with my boyfriend's best friend after he died. Then I read his final note. I'll explain the letter in a second because that's the part I can't get out of my head, but I have to give you the background first or none of it makes sense. Jake passed away in March. We had been together 4 years. He struggled with really bad depression and some other stuff, and the last year was brutal. I'm not going to get into all of it, but I'll say that I spent most of that year terrified every single day, maxed out 2 credit cards on treatment, learned what every crisis hotline number was by heart, the kind of relationship where you love someone so much, but you're also just exhausted all the time and you feel guilty for being exhausted. His best friend Marcus was around for a lot of that. They had been friends since middle school, him and Marcus and 2 other guys named Trevor and Danny. Marcus was the one who drove Jake to appointments, sat with him during the bad nights, helped me get him to bed when things got really bad. Marcus knew Jake better than almost anyone. Jake had 2 previous episodes where he tried to hurt himself before the one that actually worked. I didn't know about those until after he was gone. Marcus knew. He had been there for both of them. I found out Marcus knew and said nothing to me about 2 months after the funeral. I'll get back to that. In May, I ran into Marcus at a coffee place downtown. First time I'd seen any of Jake's friends since the service. Everyone had been giving me space, which honestly just felt like everyone disappearing. Marcus looked terrible. Lost weight, dark circles like he hadn't slept since March. We ended up at a bar, Jake's favorite bar, and we sat there for hours just talking about him. Marcus ordered Jake's drink. I started crying. We ordered more drinks. We ended up back at my apartment looking at photos on my phone. Jake at Christmas. Jake asleep on the couch with his cat. Jake making a stupid face at the camera the way he always did. One minute we were sitting there looking at pictures and the next minute we were not. It wasn't like a romantic thing. It wasn't exciting or fun. It felt more like drowning and grabbing onto the only other person who was also drowning. We ended up on the living room floor on the rug Jake picked out at IKEA. Afterward, we just laid there not talking. Marcus left around 3 in the morning while I was pretending to be asleep. He texted me the next morning saying he was sorry. I didn't respond. That was the first thing I felt guilty about, obviously. But then a few weeks later, we met up at a Starbucks, totally sober, middle of the day, and we actually talked. And the thing was that talking to Marcus felt like the closest I could get to Jake without actually having Jake. He knew all the same stories. He remembered all the same things. When I said something about Jake, he actually got it instead of just saying the way everyone else did. I told him I had feelings for him. I hadn't planned to say it. It just came out. He said he had feelings too, but he didn't know if we could trust them. We held hands at a Starbucks like a couple of teenagers and cried. It was genuinely pathetic and also the most connected I had felt to another person since March. We decided to try. That's when I found out about what Marcus knew. It came out maybe 3 weeks into whatever we were doing. We were talking about Jake's last few months and Marcus said something offhand about the week before Jake disappeared. How Jake had seemed really calm and peaceful that week. I said, yeah, I thought he was getting better that week. And Marcus got this look on his face. I asked him what that look was. He told me that Jake had called him 2 weeks before he passed, not to talk about how he was feeling or to ask for help, to say goodbye. Not directly, not in those words, but Marcus knew. He said Jake thanked him for everything, said he was lucky to have him as a friend, said he wanted him to know that. Marcus said he almost called me after that phone call. He said he almost called the crisis line. He said he told himself he was overreacting, that Jake had said stuff like that before, that it wasn't necessarily what it sounded like. He said he made the wrong call and he has to live with that. I didn't talk to him for 2 weeks after he told me that. My friend Cassandra said I should end it right there, that Marcus had information that could have saved Jake and chose not to use it, and that was something I couldn't come back from. My mom said grief makes people make terrible decisions and I shouldn't throw away something that was helping me heal over something that couldn't be changed. My dad said the whole situation was messed up and he didn't want to weigh in. I went back to Marcus after 2 weeks because I couldn't stay away. I don't know if that was the right call. I'm still not sure. We did couples therapy starting about 2 months in, which felt insane because we had only been together 2 months, but it actually helped. Dr. Martinez, she was good. She helped us figure out how to talk about Jake without every conversation turning into a fight about the phone call. Jake's mom saw us together at a grocery store in March, almost a year after the funeral. She called Marcus that night and told him it felt too soon. His sister Emma showed up at my apartment and said, and I quote, "Do you have any idea how this looks?" She was pretty nasty about it. She came around eventually, but it took months. Trevor and Danny were actually okay about it. Danny made some dumb jokes that weren't funny. Trevor got drunk at a party once and told Marcus he'd better not hurt me or Jake would haunt him, but they didn't abandon us, which I had been terrified of because losing them would have meant losing the last people who really knew Jake. We moved in together after about a year, new apartment, not the one I had shared with Jake. That felt important, fresh start kind of thing. Things were good, genuinely good. Not perfect, we both had moments where the grief came back hard, but good. Then I found the letter. It was a Tuesday night about 14 months after we started dating. I finally went through the box of Jake's books his mom had given me. The letter fell out of a book onto my lap. It was addressed to Marcus. I read it. Jake had written it about 3 weeks before he passed. 2 pages. He talked about their friendship going back to middle school, specific memories, inside jokes, the kind of thing you write when you're summing things up, normal enough for the first page and a half. Then he wrote about me. He said he had noticed something between Marcus and me. He said he wasn't angry about it. He said he had been watching us together for months and there was something there even if neither of us had acted on it or even admitted it to ourselves. He said if anything happened to him, he wanted Marcus to know that he wouldn't see it as a betrayal. He said he would rather have me with someone he trusted completely than with some stranger who wouldn't understand what I had been through. He said he loved us both too much to want either of us to be alone. I sat on my closet floor for 2 hours. Then I had to decide what to do with it. I called Jake's sister Emma the next day. I don't know why I called her instead of Marcus. I think I needed to talk to someone who had also loved Jake before I could figure out how to tell the person I was currently in love with. Emma came over and read the letter and cried. Then she told me something and she said she had actually found a similar letter at Jake's apartment when she was cleaning it out after the funeral. Addressed to Marcus, she had opened it because she didn't know what it was. It said basically the same things. She had been sitting on it for over a year because she didn't know if giving it to Marcus would help or make everything more complicated. So there were 2 letters. Jake had written this twice. I took both letters and I sat with them for a week. Marcus knew something was off. I told him I was just having a hard grief week and he gave me space. I kept turning the same questions over in my head. Did it matter that Jake had predicted this? Did it make what Marcus and I had less real, like we were just following a script someone else wrote? Did it make me feel better or worse to know that Jake had seen something in us before we saw it in ourselves? Did it change anything about the phone call, about Marcus knowing and not telling me? After a week, I gave Marcus both letters. He read them at the kitchen table while I watched. His face went through about 15 different things. When he finished, he just sat there for a while not saying anything. Then he said, "This changes everything." I asked him what he meant. He said he had spent 18 months feeling like he had stolen something that wasn't his to take. Like no matter how good things were between us, there was always this thing underneath it where he had betrayed his best friend. And now here was Jake in his own handwriting saying he hadn't, saying he had seen it coming and was okay with it. I thought he was going to feel relieved. He did for about a day. Then it swung the other way. He started saying that maybe our whole relationship was just us following Jake's instructions, that Jake had essentially planned this and we had walked right into it, that we couldn't actually trust our own feelings because Jake had set the whole thing up. We fought about that for weeks, not screaming fights, more like the same conversation going in circles. I kept saying that Jake predicting something didn't mean he caused it, that we had fallen for each other before anyone knew those letters existed. Marcus kept saying he couldn't separate what was real from what Jake had wanted. Dr. Martinez helped us work through most of it. She pointed out that Jake had written those letters and then passed away, and we had still managed to hurt each other, disappoint each other, and choose each other over and over again for a year and a half before any of this came to light. That was us. But the letters created a new problem that I wasn't expecting. Marcus got quiet about the phone call again, the one where Jake said goodbye 2 weeks before he passed and Marcus didn't tell anyone. I thought we had worked through that, but the letters dug it back up because now we knew Jake had been planning this for at least 3 weeks before that phone call, and Marcus had known something was wrong and still said nothing. I brought it up one night about 3 weeks after the letters. I told him that knowing Jake had written those letters made the phone call harder to think about, not easier, that Jake had been planning and preparing and saying his goodbyes and Marcus had been one of those goodbyes and he had just let it happen. Marcus said he knew. He said there wasn't a day that went by that he didn't think about what would have happened if he had called me that night, or called the crisis line, or driven to Jake's apartment. I asked him why he hadn't. He said he had been tired. That's the word he used. He said he had been doing crisis management for Jake for 3 years, and he was tired, and he told himself it wasn't what it sounded like because he needed it to not be what it sounded like. I didn't talk to him for a week after that conversation. Cassandra said, "Leave him." My mom said, "Stay." Trevor called me and said that Marcus had been carrying what he did for almost 2 years, and that punishing him for it over and over wasn't going to bring Jake back. Danny texted me that I needed to decide if I could forgive Marcus or not because going back and forth was hurting both of us. I went back again. We got engaged 8 months later. Marcus proposed at Jake's grave on Jake's birthday, which sounds strange but actually felt right. He said he wanted Jake to hear him make the promise. The ring was a sapphire, not a diamond, because he remembered me saying once that I never wanted a traditional engagement ring, and Jake had never remembered that. It was a good night. One of the best nights I'd had since before Jake passed. We got home and we were sitting on the couch still in our nice clothes, and I had a glass of wine and Marcus had a beer, and I was happy, genuinely happy. I asked him if he had known about the letters before he proposed, like had he known they existed and had he been sitting on that information. He said no, he had found out when I showed them to him. I said okay, I believed him. Then I asked him something else. I asked if there was anything else he had known about Jake's last weeks that he hadn't told me. The pause was too long. It turned out there was one more thing. Jake had texted Marcus a photo 3 days before he passed, a photo of his apartment cleaned up and organized, with a message that just said, taking care of loose ends. Marcus had stared at that text for an hour and then put his phone down and gone to sleep, and he had never told me about that text. I got up and went to the bedroom and closed the door. He knocked after about 20 minutes and I didn't answer. He slept on the couch. In the morning I came out and I asked him why. Not angry, just genuinely asking. We had been through 2 years of therapy and hard conversations and choosing each other over and over, and he had still been sitting on this. He said he was ashamed. That the phone call was already the thing he was most ashamed of in his life, and this was connected to it. And every time he thought about telling me, he couldn't figure out how to say it without it becoming the thing that finally ended us. I asked him if there was anything else, any other texts, any other conversations, anything at all that he knew and hadn't told me. He said no. I asked him how I was supposed to believe that. He didn't have an answer for that. We didn't talk much for a few days. I went and stayed at my mom's. She didn't say I told you so, which I appreciated. I walked around her neighborhood for hours thinking about what I actually wanted. What I kept coming back to was this. Marcus had failed Jake. He had information and he hadn't used it, and Jake was gone. That was true, and it was always going to be true. But Marcus had also shown up every single day for 2 years. He had gone to therapy and done the work and been honest about almost everything, even when it was hard. He had proposed at Jake's grave because he wanted Jake to be part of it. He had cried reading those letters in a way that you can't fake. The question I kept asking myself was whether the thing he had hidden was something I could live with or not. I went home after 4 days. I told Marcus that I was going to marry him, that I was not okay with what he had hidden, and I needed him to understand that clearly, that if I ever found out there was something else he had held back, I was done. No more conversations, just done. And that I needed him to go back to individual therapy in addition to what we were doing together, because I didn't think he had fully dealt with his own guilt about Jake, and it was leaking out in ways that hurt us. He agreed to all of it. We got married 6 months later. Trevor's backyard, Jake's favorite playlist, Jake's favorite whiskey at the bar, empty chair in the front row with a white rose on it. Danny gave a toast. He said Jake always said Sarah deserved better than him, and turned out he was right. She deserved Marcus. He said somehow, even after everything, Jake made sure she got what she deserved. I cried through basically the entire thing. We've been married 8 months now. Things are good, not perfect. Marcus started individual therapy and I think it's helping. We still see Dr. Martinez together every few weeks. We talk about Jake a lot, not in a painful way anymore, more like he's just part of our story that we carry with us. I'm pregnant, 4 months. We're not finding out the sex. If it's a girl, we're naming her Emma Rose after Jake's sister, who eventually came around and became one of my closest friends. If it's a boy, we haven't decided yet. Marcus keeps suggesting Jacob, and I keep saying I need more time to think about that one. I'm happy. For real this time, not the fragile kind of happy where you're waiting for something to break it. But here's the thing I haven't told Marcus. The thing I haven't told anyone. There's one more piece of the phone call story that I figured out on my own and never confronted him about. When Marcus told me about the goodbye phone call, he said it happened 2 weeks before Jake passed. But I went back through my own calendar trying to piece together that time period, and based on what I know about Jake's last few weeks, that call would have happened right around when Marcus and I had a conversation at the hospital when Jake was being discharged from one of his stays. Marcus and I stood in the hallway talking while Jake got his paperwork. It was maybe 20 minutes. Jake walked up while we were talking and he had this look on his face that I never knew how to read. And I think Jake saw us together that day and it was part of what made him start writing those letters. I think Marcus knows this too. I think the timeline means that conversation was around when Jake called to say goodbye, and I think Marcus has put that together the same way I have, and we have just both silently agreed never to say it out loud. Because saying it out loud means asking whether us being close, whether whatever Jake saw in that hospital hallway was part of what pushed him toward his decision. And neither of us can answer that question. And living with the unanswered version is hard enough. Am I the jerk for confronting Marcus the night he proposed about the text he'd been hiding for 2 years? Narrator here, thank you for listening to the show, and don't forget, you can also check out stories over on Instagram at AmITheJerk and listen over on Spotify/Apple Podcast. We read every comment. So let me know what you think about this story and what would you do if it was you. Also, if you ever get the itch to share your own story, send it our way if you want me to check it out. Thanks.